Hey everyone, it's Alexander, the real Mr. Robinson. Welcome to the channel. This is my review for Dinosaur, which is the 39th Disney animated film, the second in their post-Renaissance era, and one that I imagine a lot of people forget is part of the official Disney animation canon, because it doesn't look like any of the films that have come before it, or even afterwards. But anyway, this movie came out in 2000, and it follows a dinosaur, an iguanodon more specifically, named Alidar, who is an egg is kidnapped by a couple of predators, including I hope I pronounced this name correctly, Geosternbergia, not a pteranodon, you can tell by the head crest. But anyway, the Geosternbergia drops the egg into a forest on an island full of lemurs. The egg hatches and Alidar is raised among the lemurs. But there's a big disaster that happens. In this case, it's a meteor shower that destroys the home, so Alidar and his family have to travel the desert, and soon they come across a herd of other dinosaurs that are making their way to the nesting grounds. And basically they all have to get there and avoid getting killed off by predators that are following the herd. So I distinctly remember this movie for having one of the most impressive first trailers I've seen. It's essentially the first 6 minutes of the film, and it's a beautiful looking trailer with these CGI dinosaurs just being dinosaurs, no dialogue whatsoever. The fact that they shot these sequences on location and animated the dinosaurs in them is pretty impressive, and the blend is quite seamless. Sometimes it looks more impressive than Walking with Dinosaurs, which just debuted in the UK a year before this movie came out. It was such an amazing first trailer that everyone just forgot all the other trailers that came out afterwards. And because it is the opening 6 minutes of the film, it left a huge impact on everyone thinking, yeah, this is going to be an amazing film and something really unique. And then once the rest of the movie plays out, it just goes downhill from there. And it's not even terrible per se, but this is probably one of the biggest disappointments Disney has made, because you had such a great start. That opening 6 minutes is still the most impressive part about the movie, and it gives you false hope thinking that it's going to be unique, but the rest of the movie afterwards is just so bland, so boring, and there's only few aspects about it that actually help save the movie, but even then, that's kind of faint praise. Now, one of the things that you'll pick up right away with this movie is that the story is very familiar. In fact, it's actually two stories that we've seen before. One of the more obvious stories that this is a retelling of is Moses, where you have the main character leading his people to essentially the promised land. And in this movie, it's called The Nesting Grounds, but it's also very much Land Before Time, the Don Bluth movie from 1988, and one of my favorite movies of all time, because it's based around dinosaurs that talk throughout the movie, where they're being followed by vicious predators that don't talk, where they're trying to make their way to paradise after a massive disaster forces them out of their homes. And there's nothing wrong with a movie basically being a retelling of another story. It happens all the time. But the way this movie tells it is just so dull. Like, the characters are just so bland and uninspired, especially with Alidar. Alidar has no personality whatsoever. Like, he's just simply the nice guy who kind of cracks a joke every now and then, kinda. And he's just not interesting. You have his love interest, who is only there just to be the love interest. You have the original leader of the herd, Crone, who is so narcissistic and just a flat-out moron. It makes you wonder how most of the herd survived under his leadership. And he just doesn't learn anything by the end. When we get to the finale of the movie and he's killed off by the big main Carnotaurus, I'm just like, okay, he's gone. He brought that shit upon himself, so I can't feel sympathy for him at all. You know what the saddest thing about the movie is that the oviraptor in the opening sequence that steals Alidar as an egg has much more personality than any of the dinosaurs or any character in this movie that actually talks. You can actually thank Michael Eisner for that trait right there, because the way this movie came about is actually quite interesting. It was an idea pitched to Jeffrey Katzenberg back when he was at Disney by Phil Tippett and Paul Verhoeven, of all people. Yeah, the director of RoboCop, Total Recall, Basic Instinct, Showgirls, Just want to let you think about that for a second. And Starship Trooper helped pitch this idea. But this was back in the late 80s, and this was actually something he and Phil Tippett came up with while both of them were working on RoboCop. They wanted to do the movie without dialogue and with the Go Motion technology. But unfortunately, in the early 90s, a little movie came out in 93 called Jurassic Park, and that killed the idea of this movie being done in Go Motion. So eventually, the two of them weren't involved with the project anymore, and it was originally going to be done without dialogue, but when Michael Eisner greenlit the film, he insisted that the characters talk. And whenever these characters in this movie talk, it's some of the worst dialogue you could possibly imagine, especially when it comes to Aladar's lemur friend Zini, who classifies himself as the love monkey. Why? Why? And even if his dialogue wasn't so atrocious and that term wasn't a thing, look at him. He looks like he hasn't bathed in years. Like, you really think he's gonna be a ladies' man? Although I have to say that when you compare the dialogue in this movie to the dialogue in the Walking with Dinosaurs movie that came out, I want to say 2014, this movie might as well be Shakespeare, because I tried watching a little bit of that movie last night before recording the review, and I could barely last 2 minutes. Like, the dialogue and the way that they make the dinosaurs talk in that very weird Milo and Otis manner, it's so terrible. Anyway, moving on. One of the things that the animators did to accommodate the dinosaurs talking, since most of the main dinosaurs are iguanodons, is to remove the beaks. So they instead replaced them with lips. That way they can have more articulate mouth movements, which would be fine if one of the other characters in this movie, an elderly Styracosaurus, didn't have a beak. So what? So that's a brain-dead idea right there. Let's remove all the beaks from the iguanodons so we can have them talk, but we're gonna leave the beak on the Styracosaurus. But this creative decision has one advantage, and it's more of a backhanded compliment, is that it lends itself to some of the dumbest facial expressions I've seen in any movie. Like, most of the characters in this movie have the dumbest faces whenever they're surprised, scared, smiling. It ranges from creepy to unintentionally funny. Like, I want to see a website that is just full of all the screenshots of the dumbest faces that these characters make. When the most interesting character of the movie is a Carnotaurus that doesn't talk, that's not really a good sign. Now, the movie's not a complete loss. It is boring as hell, don't get me wrong, but I think there are some elements that you can appreciate. This was an ambitious movie for the time it came out, and yes, it did follow Walking with Dinosaurs, but because these two projects came out so close, I don't think one copied the other. It's very bold to have all these live-action backdrops and animate the dinosaurs in between, even if throughout most of the movie it's just a desert. So it's not that interesting or beautiful compared to the first act of the movie, but it's something that I kind of wish more modern movies would do. Like The Lion King, for example. The opening shot of the movie is the only realistic shot in the movie that they actually filmed with a camera. Everything else is CGI, when I think there are aspects of the film that didn't need to be CGI. So the movie was ambitious for its time. I will give it credit right there. And I also think James Newton Howard's score is pretty good. Everyone remembers the music that plays during the opening sequence, but the rest of his score is pretty good as well, and it's probably the only aspect of the movie that keeps it from being unwatchable, because everything else about this movie is just, again, it's not the worst thing ever, but it's just so boring, so bland, and even though the opening 6 minutes is impressive, the rest of the movie is just so uninspired. So I'm going to be nice and say watch at your own risk. There are things to like about and appreciate with this movie, but at the end of the day, the only thing that's really worth watching is the opening 6 minutes. That is so much more compelling and has more personality than the rest of the movie. I mean, if you saw F9 in IMAX, then you saw a preview for Jurassic World Dominion. That had more personality and was more interesting and beautiful to look at than the entirety of this movie. So, yeah, I don't know. This movie could have had so much potential, but they just blew it. And there you go, that's my review for Dinosaur. And next week we're going to be talking about the other Disney movie that came out in 2000, a more traditional Disney movie, and quite frankly a much better one, The Emperor's New Groove. I actually revisited this movie not too long ago, and I can't wait to talk about it. But now I want to know what you guys think about Dinosaur. If you've seen it, what did you think? Whatever the case may be, let me know in the comments below. And until next time, this is the real Mr. Robinson telling you there is only one. Hello everyone, I just wanted to say thank you all for watching my review for Dinosaur. Make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell button to get notifications. Don't forget to follow me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, go check out my Twitch channel, and support me on Patreon. I'll see you guys in the next video, but until then, have a good day and take care of yourselves.